About a year ago, I was introduced to True Niagen, a supplement specifically designed to boost a key cellular resource called NAD. That's short for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. And I was really impressed with the research that showed that increased NAD levels can promote cellular repair, maintain healthy mitochondria, and increase energy throughout the trillions of cells in our body. I've been taking True Niagen ever since, and I am truly persuaded, which is why I'm so excited to welcome them back to the program. Let's get into how True Niagen works. From age 40 to 60, humans can experience a 50% decline in NAD, leaving our cells with a shortage of that incredibly valuable energy resource. Additionally, things like immune stress, poor diet, even alcohol consumption can all deplete our cell NAD levels. Research suggests that increased NAD can support cellular defense against these physiological stressors. True Niagen is designed to boost NAD levels and is backed by clinical research and regulatory approvals. Now, while the research is still evolving, I am truly impressed by the possibilities surrounding NAD and the research behind True Niagen. And I suggest you check out their information for yourself. To learn more about the research, science, and to order your supply of True Niagen supplement, visit drdrew.com/TrueNiagen and use the code DREW at checkout for a special discount on orders of 3 bottles or more. So that's my website, drdrew.com/TRUNIAGEN, and use the code DREW today.
Hey everyone, it's a dose of Dr. Drew.
And here we are, and we are joined by the one and only great Psycho Mike Catherwood. Hey, Mike. Yeah, buddy.
Woo!
All
right.
You,
I'm great. How are you?
Your shot is a little wonky.
Yeah, why don't we get a little closer?
There you go. And
Oh, sorry. I was taking a picture of us both so that I could promote our
thank you.
amazing and stimulating conversations.
Which is inevitable.
Everybody missed you on Tuesday. I thought
sorry about that, but the school system is they like to take our podcasting and our lives and everything and then butt fuck us with
as I said, we will get kicked off YouTube, no problem. But there's already calls for Stinky Pinky and Rudy, so here we are.
Oh, beautiful.
And we are taking calls.
You live. Two things I want you to do. Tell people, first of all, tell people about your new podcast.
Mikey Likes You is my podcast, and I'm really, I got to be honest, I'm not very proud of anything that I do in my professional life besides Loveline. I like it, and I'm happy to accept a paycheck to do it, but rarely am I really proud of the investment that I make and I think the message and the content that goes into stuff. And I really am proud of Mikey Likes You. I think that I tried really hard to collect all the information that I've gotten, feedback I've gotten from listeners during my time at Kevin and Bean and Loveline regarding health, fitness, and then also just mental health and addiction and relationships and stuff, and create a completely useful podcast. I don't want to fill it with any frills or unnecessary scientific stuff or unnecessary bro kind of details. I just want to convey the message to people. I've been through the ringer when it comes to relationships, addiction, mental health, and physical fitness. And I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've also seen some success in all those arenas. And here is the stuff that I personally have seen you really found to be very, very useful. And I just crap it out all over you with this podcast and hopefully do it in an entertaining way. And that's all that podcast is about. And I really, really believe in it. And I hope people kind of not only get aware of the podcast, but find it to be useful in that capacity.
Susan just flashed up all your social media for the podcast. Where can they find it?
At Mikey Likes You 1, the number 1, not the word 1. At Mikey Likes You 1, and that's both Instagram and Twitter.
And then the pod itself is available at those social media sites.
Mikey likes you on everything except YouTube, because I don't do a video
Not
component.
YouTube. I'm sorry. iTunes.
Yeah, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, you name it. It's Google Play. It's available to you in whatever kind of a media stream that
Everybody
you
go
like.
subscribe.
And then in a second, I want you to describe the genesis of the "You Live" greeting, universal greeting that we.
I'd be happy to. I just watched Boogie Nights the other night.
So hold on. Before you do, I've something on the chat I've got to respond to. Apparently, the CDC is saying today that COVID has infected more than at least 10 times more people than we've actually measured. Which I'm wondering, Andrew is my source of lots of scientific data, what they base that data on, or is that just speculation? And I would say if that's true, that's great news, because we'd be heading towards herd immunity in pretty short order.
Right.
I would bet a factor of 2 to 5 makes sense to me based on the data that was coming out of Santa Clarita and the study done by USC in Los Angeles. But 10 times is a pretty extraordinary number. And I'd like to know what they base that on. So we'll get into that COVID stuff a little later. Now let's talk about Boogie Nights.
Well, it's, in my opinion, honestly, like a perfect film.
Yeah.
I've very rarely seen a movie where the comedic parts are truly laugh out loud funny, where the dramatic parts are heart wrenching, and it's all kind of just put into this perfect little soup. But I just happened to watch it again for the first time in maybe like 2 years.
And by the way, and people, because they've seen Boogie Night and know Boogie Nights, do not remember or may not know the historical context for it was bizarre. I will tell you. Yeah, I mean, I will tell you a story about what was Roller Girls. What's her real name?
Heather Graham.
Heather Graham was on Loveline before Mike was part of Loveline, and Adam was there, and we had Heather Graham on with a couple other actors, and there was some other, as Adam put it, film that went straight to video back in those days. And he's sitting back during the commercial break, and he's looking at Heather Graham and goes, "You seem like a talented young lady. You know, what do they got you up to these days?" And she goes, "Well, you know, I'm kind of excited. I'm doing about a movie. Now, place this when was Boogie, right? 98
it came out, so yeah. I'm going to imagine she's talking. So, you're probably talking about 97,
late 96, early 97, and she goes, it's about the porn industry in the 70s. I play roller girl. I wear roller skates the whole time, and it stars Burt Reynolds and Marky Mark, or Marky Mark's brother." I'm like,
and by the way, and from a director who hasn't done a major motion picture, he's only done a 10-minute student film.
The name, nobody mentioned his name because nobody ever heard of it. And Adam goes, "Oh my God, who is your agent? You got to change agent. This is Burt Reynolds." Burt Reynolds had not been heard of at that point since Smokey and the Bandit. In the 70s, and like, who's this other guy, Mark Wahlberg? Oh my God, what did they put you in? He literally went off for about 5 minutes about what a horrible idea this was, and because you couldn't get your head around what this was at the time.
Yeah, no, and it's true. I mean, like you, and also look, like I have a sister-in-law, my wife's brother's wife. Okay. She's Romanian, and she's fiercely intelligent, like just off the charts intellect. And she's also incredibly cynical and angry and mean, as most Romanians are. And we were talking about film, and she's a big film buff, and she really has a lot of good taste, and she's very kind of artsy about film. And she was like, being critical about modern American film. And I go, fair enough. I said, but then, you got to look at like Fincher's work and Scorsese, and you got to take into consideration like what Christopher Nolan's been able to do. And she's like, yeah, I guess. And I was like, look, I mean, there's movies like that get kind of like you roll your eyes about, but then they're amazingly meaningful films that are going to go a long way. And she's like what? And I go like Boogie Nights, for instance. And she's like, oh yeah, a bunch of naked people fucking and porn, and I go, oh no, like you gotta look past the surface of that movie and really look at what it says about like American family relationships and family structure and the whole thing. So it's easy to overlook Boogie Nights because of the topic nature, because it was Burt Reynolds and Mark Wahlberg before he was Mark Wahlberg, when he was still Marky Mark.
That's right.
But to get to the end of where we're going with this conversation, Drew and I, for some reason, I used to come into Loveline and I'd start the show and I would do like this big intro and then I'd go, yeah. And one day Drew goes, what the hell is that? Yeah. And I go, well, to be honest, there's this part in Boogie Nights and I just think it's so funny where a guy is getting oral sex from a girl in a porn film. I mean, within the film.
And by the way, I'm thinking this story is attached to you just going, yes. I'm like, yes. Where are you going with this? I was confused as you first told it to me. I'm like, what? This is a segment of Boogie Nights when there's a promo about what? So
yes.
Say it again.
And by the way, like a 15-second part of Boogie Nights that's kind of inconsequential, but it's the new star of the porn industry after Mark Wahlberg's character, Eddie Adams or Dirk Diggler, has fallen out of favor because film and like the artsier aspects of porn have gone by the wayside because now we have VHS tape. And so things are very disposable and there's cranking out videos. And the new star of porn is this guy and he's filming a movie where he's pointing a gun at a girl's head while she provides oral sex to him. And he says, yes, bitch. Yes. Oh, yes. You live. He's deciding on the quality of his blowjob on whether or not he's going to kill this woman.
He's holding a gun to her head at the time.
It's utterly insane and gross.
And then
says, at the end, for no reason whatsoever, he's like, yes, bitch, you live. Yeah.
You live.
All right.
And so you live became this, Mike started using it as a greeting.
Yes.
Or sort of way of opening the show, right?
And it became something like really beautiful and meaningful and special and nice out of something that is so gross and horrible and kind of like just misogynistic and mean and terrible.
Then we turned it into a podcast.
It was very nice. It was very I think organically it happened in a
I want to show a picture of Mike and Drew in our old studio doing this live hashtag you live in 2017.
Yes.
Look at it. Look at the old studio.
Look at us just so casual, relaxed.
Oh, I know. This is when we started,
podcasting.
Doing our live streams too. We were trying to do it on an iPhone but look how happy. Well, this was actually, we were talking about Chris Cornell's death, so it was kind of a sad one. But
very uplifting, yeah.
Yeah, I know, but it was a good one. It was really good if anybody wants to go listen.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
On that note, he didn't live.
But
you want to hear my science question?
But in just a second. But then people started calling in, going, "Hey, you live." Just
you live.
The callers just became like aloha. It just became a general acknowledgement term, and so everything we attached "you live" now to everything, and you and the Restream have been saying "you live," hashtag "you live" all over the place here. So, go ahead.
It's very sweet. You want to hear my scientific question?
I'm ready.
Okay. I'm a guy who, although I'm not learned in science, I'm a big believer in science, right?
Okay.
Don't mishear me. I'm not some like spiritual guru who believes in woo-woo shit. But I was thinking the other day, I was reading some article about how these monkeys who are the real like second place in the animal food chain when it comes or in animal kingdom when it comes to like intellect. These monkeys
second place? You mean as opposed to great apes?
No, as opposed to fucking humans.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, monkeys. Okay. All right, got it.
Okay, so it's number 2 is these monkeys, and these scientists are blown away at how they were able to fashion like these rudimentary tools and use them to like as weapons. And I was like,
hold on a second. I don't know what Susan has put in here, but something else was okay. Go ahead. So they're using sticks and things. What they showed was that they would use sticks and things to collect ants, right? You're talking about that,
right? And even in they were defending a watering hole in Africa where there's very little clean water, and the humans are like, shit. These monkeys now have weapons, and they were like blown away at how advanced these monkeys had become, right? Yeah. And I'm like, okay, if that's second place. That's how far second place has gone. And humans fly fucking shuttles into space,
right?
Land them on something, and then fly them home and land them on Earth. And we have air travel and cars and freeways and schools and skyscrapers. There's way too big a space between first place and second place. And I'm starting to legitimately believe like there's something up in human evolution. Like, how on earth can we explain that second, third, fourth, fifth place, all the way down to, 10 million place is pretty closely connected. And then first place is 7,000% better and smarter than any other animal.
Let me walk you through a little bit. What kind of difference do you think might create a sudden exponential change in the ability to fashion the environment for your needs? Kind of think about it that way.
Brain growth.
Well, brain growth is a pretty vague term. Like there's certain animals out there that have very big brains that are not necessarily.
That's true, and bears have huge brains, and they're dumb as fuck. Bears are super stupid.
Right.
But my point is like we definitely originated from other like very rudimentary primates.
So think about the brain. Think about the brain.
Okay.
And
is it development of certain pieces of the brain?
Keep going. So what piece would maybe create a sudden explosion? What the kind of ingredient would it need? So
frontal lobe?
Well, you're just throwing terms out. I mean, think about the process that's necessary. Yes, the frontal lobe is our thinking lobe and stuff.
But,
and yes,
but then what process do we have that really high functioning monkeys don't have?
Well, that's what I'm asking. Is there some one thing that you think could like really add to this ability to go from sort of, hey, I can fashion a stick to let ants crawl up out of a hole and then eat the ants, versus I can operate a space shuttle?
Right. I don't know. I don't know what that is. I guess that's my question to you.
Well, the great apes are a little better, right? The great apes are better than monkeys, and the great apes have brains structured very much more like ours. But we have an entire layer in our cortex of cells whose sole function is to communicate amongst the columns. See, the cortex is sort of built in these layers of columns, but we have a layer, and no one has really written about this. This is I've seen people allude to this, but this is my hypothesis, that those cells this layer that we have that no other primate has goes across all the columns and is very dynamic and integrates all the other columns.
Okay.
So does that make sense, how it could start to take ideas
Absolutely.
and start to put them together, right? And so
absolutely, it makes sense. It makes sense that from a schematic standpoint, I get it. The X's and O's of it make complete sense.
Yeah.
My question is how did one teeny unique species why do we develop that layer and jettison off just away from everybody else?
Well,
is there any explanation? Is there like some root we got a hold of?
This is great questions, and I spent a little bit of time thinking about this, and so let me see if I can answer it in a cohesive way. And that is that, probably a series of genetic errors or genetic somethings, or gamma rays from space, or something stressed the system and created some genetic changes that resulted in these cells popping in, and a few other advancements, like we became upright and we got a more opposable sum, then our feet changed a little bit. And by the way, these all may be very slight genetic changes in the code that have really significant effects on function.
Sure.
I mean, you got to remember our if you go read a book by a guy named, I'm blanking on his name, I did a whole podcast with him called Your Inner Fish. And he has a new one. Susan, look up Your Inner Fish for me, would you? Give me the guy's name. Stephen Shubin, Dr. Shubin. He talks about how, structures in one part of our body migrate to other parts, and, how our pharyngeal pouches, when we're developing, become things that develop into important things for social functioning. So the one thing that we continued to evolve around was not just the cognitive functioning and problem solving, which was one piece, but I think the bigger thing was our efficiency of social functioning and social communication. There it is. Where's his name?
Shubin.
Neil Shubin. Yeah, Neil Shubin. And so And it took us, a few 100,000 years with that advantage of being able to use other people and create collective problem solving that then transmits across generations, and it gets built into cultural phenomenon. It took us, it's think of the way biology works is things are slow, and then they exponentially start to increase. And so for the last 20,000 years or so, we've been really going to town with this as extraordinary amounts of information have passed from generation to generation. So if you look at animals that are highly social, whales, dolphins, elephants, they do get better at problem solving, and they need the group to survive. And that was the thing. We were horrible at surviving on our own. It wasn't until we developed collective group strategies that helped us grow agriculture and hunt properly and store these things that we then started to really take off. Because by ourselves, we're worthless in the what's called the environment of evolutionary adaptedness.
But why? Okay, that all of that makes sense, even to my dumb guy brain. But why do you think it's relegated to one species? Like, how is there not like talking pigs and
why?
No.
Yeah, why this part?
There really isn't. Because I heard the other day that like pigs can be as smart as like a 5-year-old human.
Yeah.
And that's like the maximum that they're getting. And by the way, that's not true, because with the tests they were doing on this pig, my daughter is 5 and she would fuck this pig up and like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like destroy them in intellect. And so my question is like, it just seems very strange in the billions and billions and billions of species, some of them really getting pretty far developed in comparison to others. How is it that just this one species goes light years away from the rest?
I would say that, let me try to, these evolutionary adaptations were not, they didn't have a value attached to them. They just worked at the time. Okay. And so they didn't predict this, right?
Gotcha.
So what there was at the time was communication at a distance. So we have a certain kind of throat that lets us vocalize, and then we had a certain part of our brain that developed that let us have language. And these things were probably slowly adapting over time, though there may have been some leaps, as sometimes happens. We don't know for sure. And they just happened to be things that lent themselves to this phenomenon we are living in, that we have the extraordinary beneficiary of. Each animal evolves in its environment of evolutionary adaptedness, and ours was extremely beneficial. In fact, it was the only thing that let us survive was our social functioning. And with that social functioning went predicting the future and reading emotions at a distance and communicating at a distance. And all these things were the bases for what became what we use them for now. One way of arguing is that all the things we use in our intellect to make space shuttles are accidents of evolution that we just happen to harness in this way that we use for technology. Does that make sense?
It does actually, because these slow adaptations happened over years and years and years and years and years.
But they happened because we needed social functioning to increase our survival, right?
Right.
Whereas we didn't develop big teeth, we didn't develop the ability to make dams like a beaver. We weren't in that niche. We were in a niche where, for whatever reason, this primate that started having evolved more complex social functioning got better at surviving with these complex social groups.
That actually makes sense when you look at how, without our intellect, how shitty an animal we are. We can compare. We're really not that strong in comparison.
We're not good for it. Compared to every other animal, we lose essentially by ourselves.
No, if I hunt, and if humans didn't have the intellectual capacity to create guns, I'm not hunting anything. I'm fucked. Because the weakest chimpanzee or bear can tear
your face off, no problem. Yeah. And so that's how we evolved, and that's how they evolved. And so for whatever reason, in their niche of evolutionary adaptedness, that served them, and ours served us, though it took an awful long time for it to derive benefit, right?
All right.
So it's interesting. And again, everything I'm saying may be disproven in some way there may be some evolutionary jumps. There may have been an asteroid that suddenly hit the Earth and like Gilligan's Island and exposed us to radiation, and all of our genetic changes occurred all in one giant sweep, and we started taken over our environment. Things like that could have happened. They're not impossible.
Louis
That does
Gustav
seem,
has a
though, there
question
does
on
seem-
YouTube.
Uh,
They said, does that mean the destruction of social skills, like what Twitter and Facebook has, a negative effect on society?
Lewis, does that mean the destruction of social skills, like what Twitter and Facebook, et cetera, has a huge negative effect on society? Lewis, you have to define for me what you mean by
have
the
stronger
destruction of
thumbs.
social skills. I mean, the reason
I'm with Louis, and maybe I can elaborate a little bit more.
Well,
and
go
hope
ahead.
Louis, let me know
I
if
do
you're-
believe it's bad for society. I don't know it's because of destruction of social skills.
I tend to agree with him, and let me give you this.
Yeah.
Just 20 years ago, when I was in high school, I would watch Beavis and Butthead or something, and I would see a band I wasn't familiar with that I really liked. At that point, I had to get a friend to
Right.
call a friend to come pick me up. If that didn't happen, I had to get on my bicycle and ride a bike to Sam Goody or Warehouse or Tower Records,
So quaint.
talk to another person and ask them where this record might be,
Yep.
look at the record, analyze it, go up to the counter, pay for it, maybe have some chit chat there, interact with other people all along the way, maybe stop home and get a bottle of Gatorade or whatever, because it was August in Los Angeles. A kid nowadays in the same position goes right to their phone and presses download or
Right.
or just goes to a streaming service.
That's right.
And I think like the lack of need for interaction has deteriorated our skills to the point that it is going to bring down the quality of society. Another thing is, like, when I was 16 and I wanted to talk to a girl, I had to first work up the courage to call her house on a regular phone, which meant more than likely her parents were going to pick up the phone, then go, hello, Mr. Woods. It's Michael Catherwood. Do you think I could please talk to your daughter? And then have a conversation, then hand the phone to her and have a long conversation with her where I'm essentially interacting.
Hey, and by the way, if I did the same thing in the 70s, and what the generation ahead of us, meaning our parents, was saying at the time, what is with all this phone stuff? Go over
Right.
and talk to the person. Go knock on their door and greet them and bring them a flower. And it's like, what is this phone stuff? So technology changes how we interact socially all the time.
But it's deteriorated our need and our use for real, visceral human interaction.
Right. So
And
okay.
I
so-
do think that has a
yeah.
big,
Right. So
like a
real.
disaster impact.
So somebody on the stream talked about the dorsal vagal mechanism, which he's absolutely correct upon. It's a little bit in the weeds for us to get into on a stream like this. Maybe Susan, maybe we ought to talk to Dr. Stephen Porges and really get into it. It's kind of an interesting topic. It might, some people might not like it, but the point is that we have a social nervous system, and it uses vocal prosody, our voice, our ears, our expressions, and communication that we don't even see of bodies in space. Now, something like this, you and I on a stream, it's a substitute, and people do therapy and things in this kind of environment, but it's not the same as two bodies in space and the kind of feelings and communications that pass between them. And if we lose our skill with that, we lose everything.
and our kind of organic reactions to stuff. Like, for instance, I was thinking about, like, when I was a little kid, and look, I'm not trying to be like my generation and my generation kids, it was better. But what I will say is, like, I think every guy and gal am ashamed of some of the behavior I engaged in when I was younger, all the way through up to even my early to mid 20s. But when I was a kid and I bullied a kid or I picked on another kid for the sake of making me look cool in front of other kids, I saw the look on that dude's face and it hurt me. And I go, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. And progressively, I got to the point where I did stop doing that. Why?
Yep.
Because I could experience the pain that I was putting someone else through.
Yep.
When you're on a keyboard going, you fucking suck, you're a bitch, and you're fat, and you're blah, blah, blah. You don't get that same feedback. And I think it makes it much more easy to be kind of disconnected from our humanity.
And you get the accolade of the mob. You get the mob going, good job, or piling on, and that kind of stuff. You get tribal and explicitly tribal benefits.
Well, you did get that too when you bully someone or pick on someone in real life. But oftentimes, and I think, which is the case with people who aren't sociopaths, the benefit, the tribal hoorays they didn't outweigh the negative of seeing how you hurt someone. Whereas, you know what I'm saying? Online, you only get the positive.
That's
you don't
right.
get the.
No, that's absolutely correct. Hey, our old friend John Leiterman is on the chat room here. And
John.
Hey, speaking of phones, we have a couple of calls. Do any of those jump out at you?
That's where I was going next.
Okay.
And he said they had telephones in the 70s. Very funny. I only see one call, Susan. Are there more than that?
There's two.
Ooh, so something's wrong with my phone line. I'm going to re-up it here. Give me a second. Yeah. We're going to take a phone, Mike. Ooh, there is something wrong with my call-in studio line.
You want to take Feather It, guy?
There's something wrong with my system. I can't get it to come up here.
Here, while you get it figured out, I noticed something. You know, all these science fiction movies and books, some of them are really, really good at predicting the future and how we would live. Now, the one thing all of them get wrong is phones. Whether it be like a Philip K. Dick book or like Blade Runner. I was watching Blade Runner the other day, and everything's like pretty spot on, besides like the flying cars and stuff. But you know, the idea of like everything being mechanized and automated. But then he'd run to like in the middle of Los Angeles and pick up a phone, like a payphone.
Right.
I was like, it's the one thing they never get right.
Right. They couldn't imagine this. And that's the thing about the future. There's stuff you just can't imagine.
I'll send you a picture of the two calls there.
I am having a problem.
I might reboot it, but let's.
It will not it just won't. Call in studio just will not come up on my computer.
Well, let's make sure it's working. Let's just take this guy who's been on.
Oh, you're going to put it up?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
See if it's working.
And Feathering It, is that what we're calling him?
Yeah, his name's Feather It.
Hey, Feather It. And by the way, flying cars are coming.
Hello?
I'm going to get him
Hi,
as soon as
welcome.
possible.
Nope.
We can't get these two to quit chatting. They haven't talked to each other in a while.
Hey, man, what's happening?
Hey, can you hear me?
We hear you.
Okay, cool. So I've got a question about, I think I have hyperhidrosis. When I was maybe 16, I noticed it's kind of localized under my arms. Mm-hmm. But I'm wondering, like, I think it may be related to anxiety. I've never gotten it diagnosed. I've heard some stuff about like Botox, but I don't know if that's safe.
Well,
I was curious what
you have sweaty pits, right?
Yeah, but it gets like, I mean, it'll reach my waist sometimes, and I'm just like sitting at home.
Yeah, there are the Botox and that kind of stuff is usually for the hands and face, which can be also equally as distressing.
No, they use it in your armpits too. I've heard of it.
I'm aware of that. And I was going to get to that.
I beg your pardon.
And so they can use it for armpits, but it is really effective in hands and face. And Corolla had it on the face, on the forehead, and he actually had a ganglion blockade, which is the other thing you can do. They go in and they clip one of the sympathetic ganglion there, and it shifts where you start sweating. But armpits are sort of where you're supposed to sweat, so it's kind of a little bit of a different thing. People can do stuff there. It's a little tougher putt. The first thing to try is prescription strength antiperspirants. Have you done that?
I have. It gets like way too itchy.
Ugh.
Like itchy to the point where I like start sweating on my face.
And what have
so
what
a
else?
Little counterproductive.
And what else have they suggested for you?
I haven't been like diagnosed with it or anything. It's kind of, 25-year-old who.
Yeah, I mean, there are people that specialize in this. I mean, you can get online and look around, and there are people that really just do this. They do the surgeries. They, really get on the various techniques for treating it. So I would just say the best you can do is, get somebody who really knows how to deal with it and start, stepping through the different treatments. And again, there are surgical options. People have lots of mixed feelings about whether those surgeries are worth it and whether they work and that kind of stuff. And of course, as we said, there is always Botox type thing, but that's a recurrent sort of a treatment oftentimes. And anything for you, Mike, for the sweaty pits?
Dude, I actually, not only do I not have any like intellectual idea of what's going on, I'm not a sweater particularly. Like even when I work out really hard, I kind of just get glaze on my forehead. So I wish I could help you out, buddy, but it's not my thing.
And then we got Steve up. Steve, what's going on?
You live.
You live.
You hear me?
Yep, we got you.
You live.
You live.
Mike, it's great to see you.
Thanks, man. You too. Great to hear you.
Got a question for you. I have been concerned. I am wondering how Rudy is functioning socially during this lockdown.
I'll go
I'm
get
really
him.
worried about it.
Oh, he's going to
Is it
get
too
him.
early in the day.
Hey, Stevie's
he
Stevie's going to go get him. So thank you for asking. Rudy was nearby. Oh, here he is. Hey, man.
What's up, dog?
Hey, buddy. So
How you doing, fool?
Steve wants to talk to you. Hey, Steve, you're on with Rudy.
Yeah, I've been really concerned during this lockdown. I hope it's not too early in the day. I hope you're awake. But want to see how
I'm
you're
wide
doing
awake,
during the
fool.
lockdown. You know, you've been
I've talked to him a couple times about this, and he's remarkably resilient. Good. Rudy, tell us about what the lockdown's been like for you.
Like, you know, I think like everyone, fool, is como se dice, not like ideal, or like my therapist says optimal. It's not optimal, but you know, I take life on life's terms. You know, like I realize like I get some feria, I get a paycheck, even though I can't work. You know, now I can, but at first I couldn't even work. But you know, the government was kicking me down a check, and like things are good with my wife, things are good with my kids. So all things considered, like my life was good.
Some of your kids work. Did they get a check too?
Well, like my one son does, because he's a Marine.
Oh,
you know, so
nice.
he gets. Yeah, no, I'm so proud of him. You know, that he decided to serve his country.
When did that happen? I did not know.
Like as soon as he graduated last year. You know, like he just.
Know, Rudy, I last time I talked to you, I had kind of a new experience with you that I had not thought about, which is, well, that people get confused about you. Sometimes they think you're of Mexican descent. I mean, like literally like a Mexican.
Oh, no, I'm born and raised in LA, fool.
Yeah, and I think people in other parts of the country get a little confused about that. And so when you say, you know, serve my country, even though it's not like you converted as a citizen, you grew up in Boyle Heights.
That's right, fool. You know, like I think like a lot of people, and look, one thing I don't like is when people look at any type of question or like imperfection in the story as like a racism or something. Like the truth is like there's a lot of brown people in this country, especially where we live, that aren't citizens, fool. So like I can see how people can make that like decision in their own mind.
Does that make you resentful, or does it make you feel bad for the people that aren't citizens? Where do you come in on this?
Yeah, no, I do feel sympathy. My dad was born here, but my mom, her family is she's from Mexico, you know, like, so it's different. And like
I never knew this. What part?
Huh?
This is something I've never heard. What part
Juarez,
of Mexico? Juarez.
That's right. Juarez. And like you know, so yeah, I definitely feel like sympathy. I probably like empathy for like you know, the people who have to come up to this country and like and risk their lives even to make it in. But like, you know what else I feel empathy for though, dog? There's a lot of my homeboys, you know, especially because I'm like a blue collar guy, you know, since I gone straight, since I got out of the pen, like I work with a lot of fools, you know, who they work construction or they work in like gardening or agriculture, and like they can't get like white guys and black guys who like they can't get a job. They can't get a job because some foreman, he doesn't want to hire no citizen. He wants to hire someone he could pay less, you know, and so I sympathize with them.
Got it.
I don't think it's a reason. Obviously, it's not a reason to hate or dislike.
So it's like a system problem you like to solve.
Yeah, it's like, man, people, you know, one thing I think, in my opinion, like a lot of the problem with what's going on in this country right now is everybody gets angry at everybody else because their life isn't adding up the way it should be. And like, I get that. My life didn't turn out. I certainly have experienced discrimination and racism, but I don't think it's like inherently everybody else's fault, because I try to take the time to walk a mile in every other man's shoes. You know what I'm saying, fool? Like, Lord knows, like, the police have done me wrong. I've had the shit beaten out of me. I've been arrested times when I wasn't even doing nothing wrong. But like, I also know, like,
Did you talk back to the cops or anything, or?
Fuck yeah, fool. I talk back with my putazos is what I talk back with. Pero like, I have a cousin I have a cousin who's a cop. You know, he's just a vato from the streets like me, and like he's a human being, and like he's a real person with a mom and a dad and a family of his own, and like he's just trying to go about his day, you know, and like his clientele all day every day is fucking assholes, you know, like so. It's, you know, it's not necessarily the police. It's not necessarily white people or black people or this. It's just like, man, we are all in this world trying to work together, and shit doesn't work out straight usually for all of us.
Rudy's becoming a philosopher as he engaged with us. And people are asking on the chat, how is Sad Girl? Is she still on smoothies?
No, I tapered.
You tapered the smoothies?
Yeah, so now she's still kicking around the ephedrine.
Oh,
you know, because it's like
she's like her
Suboxone. It's like her Suboxone.
Not like Suboxone. You can't let her take that. That's not good, man. Is she using?
I don't let her take nothing. I don't let her take. I just sprinkle it in like this.
You putting the ephedrine in? You're doing that?
Like Salt Bae, the fool, like this.
Oh, dude. Oh, Rudy. Hey, man, speaking of Boyle Heights, this is a little bit local, you know, fare for those of you around the country or even around the world, but there's a LA City councilman that represents Boyle Heights that just got arrested.
Oh,
Jose
he's keeping it real.
What's up,
man?
Keeping
it real, fool.
What do you think? He's keeping it real. What do you mean?
What did they bust him for?
Taking bribes from Chinese developers.
Oh, fuck that guy.
They found hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash and a bunch of stuff against him.
Hey, listen, fool. If you're like a councilman or in the politician or something, like the chief of police, and like your kid gets busted for a DUI or something where they didn't hurt nobody, but they did something real bad, and you get them off and shit. Like I get it. Everyone's trying to like use their influence to massage a situation. But if you're fucking a crook and you're really stepping on the toes of all the people that you promised to help out, then fuck you, dog.
Maybe he thought, I'm not defending the guy, but maybe he thought, hey, the only way these guys will come in here is if I, make it look good for them, and I'll be able to smooth this out if I have the money and get these Chinese developers in here with all this money.
The more and more I started working for real companies with real jobs and get benefits and shit like that, I started to realize you can do the things you need to do to be successful in this country and not be immoral.
It
might cost you a couple extra dollars. It might not make things as easy, but in the end, it's all about greed when you fuck people over just to be successful. Because fool, like you don't need to do much to get Persian people and Chinese people to come and build shit. You don't need to do much. It's like just make it a couple tax breaks. I understand that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like or like set up a situation that makes it feasible for them, like Amazon or some shit, But you don't need to be collecting extra money and doing little perks.
Hey, Rudy, there's calls for you to run for politics. This is a side of you that no one has really seen.
Oh, no.
And I think Boyle Heights could use you.
You know what I figured out, fool? The older I get, the wiser I get. And all that means is I start to realize how much shit I don't know.
As long as you get stay sober and stay out of the crosshairs of the cops. Yes.
And that doesn't include weed. Of course, that doesn't include weed because that's my medicine and that's legal.
Of course.
But you're right, fool. I got my mind straight, fool.
Yeah, and it's gotten better over time too, man. I can see it.
Right, that's right.
Well, Rudy, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. I'd like to talk to Mike again, if you don't mind.
Okay. Can I give you one more nugget of knowledge especially for you young lovers out there?
Okay, Rudy Nuggets.
If you have a partner that you're just starting to get to know, and he or she licks your butthole.
Oh, God, here we go.
That's tremendous because it shows that they are thorough at being a lover.
It shows how much they're willing to put themselves
in
harm's way. Really put themselves in harm's way for you.
But you have to assume that's not the first butthole they've licked.
Oh yeah.
So it's like
how you think.
It's like the dichotomy of asshole.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a dog.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so do the math. You butthole breath or thorough lover?
Mike.
You are the Kulo breaker, my friend. We'll look for you on Twitter as Kulo Breaker, right? Isn't that where you're
Right.
found? All right, man.
At Kulo Breaker, I'm all over the place. Fool.
All right, Rudy. Thank you for all your wisdom.
Everybody his page.
There he is. There's Rudy. Woo, look at him. He has an FU right there on his Twitter page. How's he get away with that? He needs more followers, too. Mike, Rudy, waxing philosophical today.
He's a you know what Rudy reminds me of? Our mutual friend Andy Dick and our mutual friend, well, I don't know how well you know him, but I know you know him, Mike Tyson, where people have an idea of him, but it doesn't at all tell the real story. Like, he's actually a really thoughtful, sensitive guy.
Yes, and often very smart too. But all three guys, Rudy, Mike Tyson, and Andy, very very smart, very thoughtful, very sensitive too. That people don't think.
Yeah, and as you know, as a man, a very learned man, how well your brain functions is not necessarily reflective of how learned you are
or how smart. Right. Yeah. Yes.
Like Jason Ellis. Like, Jason Ellis can barely read, but he's one of the smartest guys I know. He really is. His brain functions so well.
No, Corolla, same thing. We had to get him up to speed on stuff, and he uses everything now. I was wondering what would have been like if a guy like Jason or Adam had been really educated. Can
you imagine? Yeah, if like Adam or Jason went to Harvard Law or something, they'd be unstoppable.
Mm-hmm. It would have been different.
So there's a caller, but they didn't write their name or any information in there.
Okay,
so
I got it.
We're blind here.
Okay, caller, we don't know your name. What's going on?
You want me to push talk?
Hello?
Hi there. Okay, it doesn't seem like.
Can you hear me?
We hear you. You hear us?
Okay, sorry, I didn't understand that I had to write my name. But my name is Gina.
Hi, Gina.
And so I was listening to what you guys were saying about the phone call, and with everything that's going on right now, I have a kid that just graduated this year. So he's going to go and do his own thing. But I have a freshman that's getting ready to go into high school. And we live in San Antonio, Texas. So most likely he'll probably do remote high school, probably, I think, for at least the first quarter. So my thing is that I know you guys said, like, get out and, don't use necessarily the phone and stuff like that. But how do we get our kids to do stuff without, like, electronics and stuff like that, with everything that's going on right now, because they're itching to go see their friends, but, they're not allowed to go see their friends and things like that. It sucks for them. And
it does suck for them. It does suck. It really does suck. Mike, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I do. And I want to say, Gina, like, before you even start to listen to what I have to say, I am by no means an expert or qualified to be giving advice on, like, how to live life. But I'm a guy with experiences just like you, and I have a kid. So this is just what I've thought about it. I've been waxing poetic about it for a long time because I'm concerned about my kid's life. When I was like getting ready to go into high school, there was I don't know how old you are, but if you're around my age, you will remember the AIDS scare was so crazy, where they were literally having seminars with kids there, where it's like, don't touch another person, like wear raincoats before you go into a public room.
And by the way, that was me and Dr. Fauci creating that hysteria. I went on the radio because Dr. Fauci was talking to this young physician saying, you got to change their behavior. There's going to be 10 million dead. And we went out and felt good about changing the behavior, but didn't realize we scared the hell out of everybody. And by the way, it's the reason people aren't wearing condoms now, because that was such an overstatement. They looked around and went, we shouldn't listen to those guys anymore.
Yeah.
And so people stop listening to public health officials when they overstate risks. It's what we're dealing with right now as it pertains to masks. But go ahead, Mike.
I was just saying, like, and in generation before that, kids, 18, 17-year-old, they were looking at the Vietnam War. It's like, this fucking country's going to separate. It's going to fall apart. It's going to fall off the face of the earth. What am I going to do as someone who's 17, 18 years old and maybe get drafted, and I don't know what my future see? And 20 years before that, my point being is that every kid that's at like high school age is faced with this impending doom from the adult world above them. And it's only natural because we want them to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And every generation figures out a way to work through it in a positive way or to wallow in it and let it destroy them. And it's mainly based upon like, how do their parents treat them and react to it? And I feel like your kid is going to definitely have to sacrifice a lot of social interaction with his friends and with maybe potential romantic relationships and all that. And that's just the way it is. And that sucks. But if you make sure that every moment you're with him, you're engaged and you're listening to him or her, and you're not on your phone and you know what I'm saying? Like you really work to enrich their life. In 20 years, no one's going to remember anything because it's all going to be the same. He's still going to be the same dude that I am at 40, that Drew was at 40. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that there's this one thing we can do to just make sure that it all works out in the end. And that is just constantly be encouraging him to open up to you and being receptive to it. And then opening up to him and him being receptive to you.
Well, like I'm 40. My husband is 40. He's just retired from the military. We got married at 20. And so my oldest, like I said, he was salutatorian for, and just he's going to Texas A&M. So it's different for my youngest because he's very social and in football. Like he's in football camp right now. COVID hit one of the pods, so they're all they all had to go into quarantine. That group had to. Oh. So you know, he's still doing football camp. But for me, and I'm sure Dr. Drew can maybe help me with this one, is my husband, he's retiring, and I still live in San Antonio, and he's moving to Chicago next week because COVID hit, and he tried to fucking find a job here, and of course, it didn't work out, but he had to move. He's moving to Chicago, which is great. We have a really good job opportunity up there. And they're really welcoming. But I've been a drug addict since I was 8. So I am recovering addict now 2 years. I've been almost clean 2 years. So my kids have seen a lot. I've been clean, not clean, clean, not clean. When Chester did what happened to Chester, that was really hard on me. And so I've been a straight Linkin Park fan, and that really was tough. And I got clean on my own. I stuck myself in my room for 3 months.
And we knew. Hang on, slow down. And we knew Chester.
Sorry.
We knew Chester well. That was a very devastating thing. How long have you been sober this time?
Yeah.
How long?
I've been clean for 2 years.
Okay. And is there any, congratulations. Is there any plan to move to Chicago?
I'm not going to move to Chicago till my oldest graduates,
Okay.
my youngest graduates.
Got it. And so what is your question?
My husband has a really tough time with being with somebody that's, trying to understand me being clean and trying to live with somebody that's recovering, drug addiction. And so with him moving, it's difficult. I don't know how to.
So one thing. All right, we're gonna put you on hold and talk about you now. So a lot going on, a lot of stuff. I think whether he moved or didn't move, he should get a therapist or go to Al-Anon. But he sounds like the kind of guy that might be best served by having a therapist. You agree, Mike?
I absolutely do. And I just wanted to say, I don't want to go on any thin ice here that I don't belong on. But I have, in the last 2 or 3 months especially, gotten an insane amount of DMs and tweets and stuff from military veterans who either they themselves are drug addicts or are dealing with a family member and they can't, because of what the United States military does is they make the world's greatest that humanity's ever seen, the greatest soldiers we've ever could possibly imagine. But what comes with becoming a very calculated a soldier is a removal from your emotions and not taking those into consideration.
Right.
Working really hard to get very good and efficient at divorcing yourself from emotions so that you can keep your head clean in all situations.
Yeah.
What makes for someone who's really healthy and happy back in the real world is the complete opposite. And so you have to be really, 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 really sympathetic to your husband not being able to understand you as an addict. And look, I'm a drug addict myself, so I get you. And you got to be sympathetic to him and understand that, like, your recovery is not only super important for you to stay clean for you, for your own well-being, so you live.
Your kids.
But your kid and your husband, they're hanging on by a thread as it is.
Yeah.
So just keep that in consideration before you say, like, things are getting too hard. I just got to go back to the bottle, or I just got to go back to the powder.
No.
Because
can't be an option.
Because your husband, unlike most people who don't get addiction unless they have it themselves, he's on another level where he's like, I don't understand. You're faced with a problem, solve it and move on, because he's a military man. Right. So you just kind of be cognizant of that, and then encourage him to engage in as much interaction with mental health professionals, especially those who are military veterans themselves, because it seems like, at least from the experience I've had with dealing with these brave men and women, they don't really want to talk or open up to someone who hasn't been through what they've been through.
That's right. Sure. That's very common. That's why groups work very well for military mental health treatment. But the other thing is, I hear it in your voice and your history, of course, having been a drug addict. You said since you were 8, trauma. And so you, young lady, need to get a therapist also to make sure you get trauma treatment on top of your recovery, so you can really get what we call a complete recovery. So a lot of stuff going on there, though. My goodness, lots. And then, of course, maintaining a relationship at a distance is really tough. Make sure, he's down in San Antonio as much as possible, and that you make visits to Chicago, and you guys make a discipline out of that. And it may be, I'm imagining your home group and all your support is in San Antonio now, so him coming to San Antonio is probably a better idea than you going to Chicago. Mike, what do you think about our old friend Ron Jeremy and his?
I just saw on the news when I was at the gym, on like the TVs that are on mute. I just saw that he was in court handcuffed. I don't know what happened. I have no idea. 3 rape charges, I think. Oh. Yeah. Oh. Wait.
Yeah, I can. Let me. Susan's going to look it up. I hear her typing away. Do you see?
Sexually assaulting. Oh boy. Ooh, he don't look so good. Let's see.
Yeah, porn star
sexually assaulting 4 women.
Yeah. So there you go.
Let's see.
Look.
Wow.
I have a hard time, even though, like, all my personal interactions with Mr. Jeremy, he's always been really nice to me, and actually, like, kind of a smart, gentlemanly guy.
Wow.
I don't see that side of him, but I have a hard time believing numerous women are going to make up that type of thing about a man. So he needs to be punished to however is appropriate in the eyes of the law, and he needs to get mental health help. And I do think, like, I'm in no way making excuses over it, but I have a lot of friends, like the people that I actually care for and trust, that are in the adult industry. And from what I understand of it, it's not the nicest place for learning how to treat a woman. You're actually either encouraged or celebrated for being a little bit more abusive and looking at women as a sexual tool and an object. And I can see how a lot of guys can, especially if they've been in the industry for fucking 40 years, can lose sight of the fact that that's not how you treat a person in real life.
Well, it happened between 2014 and 2017, and then one in 2019. So it was like
2 years ago.
Yeah. So
I wonder
it
why it
started
took so long to come forward.
Well, it's just sort of, it's probably kind of a Me Too thing.
Oh, it is a Me Too thing, but
I also think, look, a lot of dudes who are, and I've had tremendous amounts of problems with the way that the whole Me Too stuff is rolled out. Fundamental problems. But I also can totally see how women don't come forward.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I totally. But I think these days people are empowered to do so. Are they not? I'm sure there's plenty of people that hang back, but I mean, they're sort of. I mean,
this is way more baby shit than being raped or sexually assaulted. When I talk about my body image issues.
Yeah.
But literally no guy has talked about that Zero men talked about that.
Yeah.
And I went on Loveline once and got fucking hundreds, if not thousands, of dudes emailing me, texting me, talking about, hey, man, I feel the same way. I can't believe it. It's so. And then I go on the air more with the podcast and talk about it, and you just start seeing like guys like feeling a little more comfortable to open up about it. And that's way less intense than being sexually abused or raped as a woman. So I could totally see like where like I'm going to keep this secret for the rest of my life because it makes me feel awful and I'm shameful and blah, blah, blah. Then you start to see celebrities and people in power and everyone and collectively is like coming forward and opening up about this. You're like, all right, well, you know, don't feel so bad anymore. Maybe I can do this. You know, the courage travels in groups is a real thing.
Yes. You need support. You need to feel empowered. Did you watch the Epstein documentary? Speaking of that stuff?
I didn't, but I've been listening to a documentary, an ongoing kind of serial news podcast regarding Epstein. And it's not conspiracy theory. They're interviewing people who he's directly affected.
Wow.
Either in his business practices or in his disgusting sexual
exploits,
prostitution and exploitation practices. And I honestly, like, it seems like science fiction to me, like how someone can be that connected, that powerful, that rich, that unknown for the most part until the last 3 or 4 years. It really is like this weird alternative dimension of existence. It just doesn't, I can't wrap my head around it. You know?
I mean, he was like probably a psychopath. I mean, certainly a sociopath for sure. And, it's not clear how he manipulated people. Really, they allude to stuff in the documentary, but I'm not sure how he did all of it. But it's unbelievable. And by the way, where's the woman that it was his wingman? That what's her name?
They've charged her with stuff, but they're having a hard time finding her.
Yeah, she was a predator. Oh my God, awful stuff. So anyway, I'm glad this stuff has come out in any event, and seeing the women that were involved with it, you know, empower one another and step forward and stuff. It was really quite an interesting experience. I can imagine how other women who've been through difficult things would feel similarly empowered from it.
And you know what else I think has been a real asset for me, as admittedly like a really horny, disgusting straight guy, is that you and I have talked about my first sexual experience, and I obviously, like, I'm not trying to compare it to women who have been like overpowered or physically overpowered and everything, but I lost my virginity at 13 to a 19-year-old, right? And it was 100% consensual, but I didn't want to do it. Does that make it? And like, I heard Whitney Cummings say that about,
you were overwhelmed by it.
And I heard Whitney Cummings say that about how like her earlier sexual relationships as a young girl in her teens and 20s and stuff, where she's like, it was totally consensual. I never expressed any pushback, but I didn't want to do it and I didn't like it. And I totally feel the same way. So like, I can easily see where a lot of these girls are coming from, where a lot of other guys maybe can't, where they go, well, if you didn't want to do it, why the fuck you do it? I want to have sex when I have sex. It's like, you could so easily be manipulated by someone else who's more powerful than you. Like, it's so easy to just... And
there was back then, I'm not so sure it's so pervasive now, there was a social endorsement. Like if you as a 13, 14-year-old male, people, you turning that down would have been like, well, what am I doing? That's what I'm supposed to want to do, right? Right. There was a lot of that stuff back then.
And there's still a weird thing. Like, we've definitely grown, you know, as time has gone on. And women, I do think there's less stigma around sex for women, but it's still way worse. The other night, my wife and I were talking. We were just sitting chit-chatting about like all the mistakes we made when we were in our like 20s, like in trying to like find ourselves. And hers carried out a little longer than me because I had to get sober.
Your life's dependent on it.
Right. Like I was going to die.
Yeah.
But so we were just discussing all this stuff, like you waking up not knowing where you are, or waking up not knowing what you did last night. And she said to me, she's like, I would just constantly worry that I hooked up with a guy or I slept with a guy and I didn't want to, or I didn't remember it, you know, and I was so immediately ashamed of something that I didn't even know if I did. And it was all revolving around sex. And I was like, I never once felt that way. I never once woke up and go, I sure hope I didn't fuck someone last night.
Right.
That was never, because there's no need for me to be ashamed of that. Now, I definitely worry, like, I fucking hope I didn't run someone over last night. I sure hope I didn't insult one of my friends unnecessarily, or I had all this concern and shame. None of it revolved around sex. But for my wife, who's a female, like, it all did. That was like her number one concern.
A couple of things. Monica Ricci points out young women have no idea how to assert personal boundaries when they're young. They don't understand quite oftentimes how to do that. And then Aaron Howell, you said, didn't Drew work with the sex addict Penny Flame on the Sex Addict show? Yeah, I did. Penny, now known as Jennifer Ketchum, is a social worker, got a graduate level degree, a PhD, I think she got, in Washington, and now she's written 2 books, and she's a social worker, medical social worker, and married with a child, and is a different person, a different life, and recovering from drugs and alcohol, which she didn't, during that Sex Addict show, she didn't identify or understand how bad her drug addiction was as well. So I talked to Jenny as recently as 2 days ago. Talked to her all the time.
Really?
Yep. She's working with Paulina on something, and she was saying how much she enjoyed working with her.
Nice.
So
we did a podcast with her too.
Yep.
Yeah.
She's,
you can find it on drdrew.com.
All right, guys.
Another You Live.
I think we got to wrap this thing up, man. You've given us a lot of your time, and so has Rudy, and I appreciate it. And it's great. It's funny how easy it is for us to knock off a couple hours where we did it for how many years every night.
I know.
You know. So here we are, and appreciate the calls. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to get to everybody on hold here, but we appreciate you all on the restream too. I want to review some COVID data for people. I like kind of wrapping up with that, but there's some extraordinary stuff going on, and I want you, Mike, might you want to stay for this, or want me to kind of
go ahead? Yeah, man.
All right, so
okay,
I want you to
get the,
I'm going to show you. Susan pulled up an article, and I want to show it to you.
I've learned a new way to show up what's on the internet.
Yeah, so show this article. I'm going to read what's in the article. It's extraordinary. No, not that. The article.
Oh, the article. Oh, yeah. I got the right heading too. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, you found it. Yeah, myself.
Yeah, I found this today. I went to my E-Trade and I found this on the Bloomberg article. You know how
so
they have.
Bloomberg is normally a decent. Okay, pandemic rages in the U.S., spurring quarantines and mask orders. And let me read the paragraphs down there. It's unbelievable to me that this is the press. This is our press. Hang on. COVID-19 is tearing through the U.S. heartland, seeing records of hospitalizations and forcing businesses to rethink their plans to reopen. A 4% uptick in hospitalizations. Businesses are trying to get it right, so they reduce. They're not thinking about not reopening, though, if they had an outbreak in their facility. I want to read that. Would you put the other one back?
Okay, my bad.
The virus surge is throwing U.S. into disarray.
Yeah, I love that one too.
So I want to read that second paragraph. That was, no, you've gone way down too far.
Sorry, honey.
There it is. Okay. With the U.S. seeing one of its highest ever increases in cases Wednesday, some states took dramatic measures. I mean, this language is insane. Here's what happened. Let me look at L.A. County, for instance. L.A. County, we had 3,500 cases yesterday. Today, we have 1,200 cases. We look at California. You can see it's a little spiky, and we went up, and it was predicted that we would go up because there were tens of thousands of people in the streets not wearing masks. And if there was not an uptick of 5 to 10%, the lockdown was a waste of time then. The lockdown would have been a sham if there had been no uptick from us beginning to move about again and there being tens of thousands of people in the streets. So thankfully there was an uptick, which lets us know that the lockdown probably served a function, particularly when we were in the fog of war, went on maybe a little too long. And now, if you look up California daily infections on the University of Washington website, I pointed this out yesterday. The University of Washington, which puts out its studies there, look at that. That is the top graph. Daily the top deaths. Dotted line is what our daily deaths are going to be on our present trajectory if we don't take social distancing measures. That one that's going down towards zero, that is if with universal mask wearing. That is how much of a difference we can make. It is insane how dramatic we can reduce this thing. And you don't see a second spike in there either, do you? He was at one point predicting a second spike, not with the mask wearing. So those of you that want to draw the line at the mask, put up Arizona if you would. If you want to draw the line at the mask, you see the mistake you're making. You see it.
Look at this thing.
Look at that, Arizona, where they weren't doing so well. They weren't practicing distancing and mask. Look at that, how we deviate from our present course if we just wear our masks. So all that insane rhetoric that they're putting out there, I mean, it really is insane rhetoric.
I know.
It's just crazy. So I'm looking at the statewide data in California. Yeah, it's an uptick, and let's see if that delta continues to evolve. If it starts to pick up steam, then by all means, that rhetoric, the journalistic rhetoric, would be appropriate.
I want to see New York.
But right now, it's a tick. It's an uptick that we would expect. The death rate is actually going down. Would you put the?
Here's New York.
Yeah, look at that. It's just
That's I think your most important point to me as a layperson.
Yeah.
And I have literally zero agenda or political feelings when it comes to lockdown and COVID and masks and all that. Yeah. I'm just trying my best to do what's right. But when I hear like, exponential growth in cases and everything, I always am like, well, show me proof that that's a bad thing? You know what I'm saying? Like, right. If the exponential cases are increasing exponentially, but the death rate's either staying the same or going down, then isn't that cool? Isn't that a good thing?
Right.
Honestly,
so here's the other piece of evidence that this is predominantly people who are in the
street. I want you to look at New York.
Yeah, I know. It goes to 0.
And they just got out. They're just going into
and they're doing a good job with the masks. As you notice how the masks they didn't give the mask thing there because they're already really in good shape. But put up United States daily deaths, and you will see, and this is to Mike's point, that the death rate is stabilizing or going down, and that's that. And you can, and it's mostly young people that are there. It is. That's the United States. And again, we can have a dramatic impact on that if we just wear our damn masks. That the United States, predominantly it is young people. No, that's it.
That's infections.
Yeah. That's hospitals. Daily deaths you had up there was the first one. There it is.
There we go.
Yeah. And
644 prediction.
Yeah, and there's some people saying there's 10 times more infections out there than are predicted, which is great for immunity, for heading towards herd immunity.
Are these still elderly people, or are they?
Well, the deaths we don't know. We're trying to get that data, but the cases are mostly young people now, which is, again, the people that were out on the streets where we would expect to see 40. The transmission. If there was not transmission, if the demonstration did not result in any outbreaks, and it'll be similar in Tulsa, there'll be some stuff from this is a non-denominational thing. You gather in groups, there's outbreaks. And if it's not, then the shelter-in-place thing was a total ridiculous. Was actually killed people. Because outdoors we know is better than indoors.
You want to see Sweden?
No. No. I'm trying to read through some stuff here.
Sorry. What about other countries?
Andrew told me the CDC director is saying that they are doing their own studies on the incidence of the disease around the country, and it may be 10 times higher than we know, which is good news. Which is really good news. And because we'll head towards more herd immunity than we know. Maybe that's why things are decreasing so dramatically. But let's watch the death rate. It may go up in the next week or two. And let's watch the delta, the rate of increase on these cases, make sure it doesn't start to pick up steam. And then we can yell at the press even more for their panic porn and their Team Armageddon stuff. Alex Berenson, who I'd interviewed here, believes that the reason cases are going up, particularly in places like Texas and Florida, he thinks it's because people are going indoors to get out of the heat and go into regions of air conditioning, and so we're back together indoors, and that's where transmission
in Arizona.
It's a very interesting theory. I still say it's on target for what I predicted. It's right on target for what I predicted from the demonstrations. And why are we ashamed of that? That should be okay. You knew you took a risk. Amount of people got infected. And by the way, the people at the demonstrations were very diligent about getting tested. That's the other reason we're picking this up. There's a lot more testing being done. And so they should be applauded for that, as opposed to, as in New York State, Mike, you'll love this, it's against the law to ask a young person with COVID whether they had been to a demonstration. Does that sound insane to you?
That makes tremendous sense.
Yeah, that's good science. That's good science. Somebody's saying in Texas they're hanging out at bars. Yeah, bars are concerning us. Susan and I hung out at a bar last weekend, and we were like, if we get sick this week, we know where we're going.
It's weird because nobody was.
So we're kind of, but we've been good so far. Yeah,
adults in bars.
Yeah,
the least dangerous thing about that is COVID.
That's right. That's true. That's really, which is a whole other thing. Which we're seeing this
hangover the next.
We're
day.
seeing this. We're seeing this dramatic people are out of control right now. Come on, man, let's
Have
have
a
another
drink. It's like,
Yeah,
okay.
people are so hungry for social interaction.
The
It's
peer
crazy.
pressure was just.
But in any
astounding.
event, the diseases of despair, to that point, diseases of despair are markedly up right now. And
So
that's the next
I
thing.
ordered those masks that are like clear, so you can just wear 'em. I
Like a
did, too.
bukkake mask?
I'm never going to be able
Is that what that is?
I'm not going to be able to wear this
Is
mask.
that what it's?
It will
because
forever will
I
be
heard
now.
I heard that they're better than the other masks because they don't get all your snot in them, and then. when
I
you
don't
put 'em-
know that anybody's actually studied that, but what's wrong with your snot if it's your own snot?
Okay, I have a problem with masks. We need mask etiquette. Okay, so when you're wearing a mask and you
Yeah.
show up at a restaurant, don't put it down on the table. Put it in a plastic bag in your bag, in
Yeah,
your
Susan's been
pocket,
on
or
me about
whatever.
that.
Because A, you don't know whose mask was there before you, and if they really cleaned the table. B, you're spreading your germs everywhere by putting, and if you aren't washing it, because I know most guys, they probably don't wash their masks.
Yes,
I mean, I
Wendy,
wash mine a lot, but
a visor. Yes,
but the
ma'am, a
visor doesn't touch your face, and it kind of keeps, you might be able to get it this way, but you can wear the mask underneath and then take it off and eat and drink.
Yep, I agree. All right, you
don't know.
guys,
I'm
we have to wrap things up.
Nobody talks about mask etiquette.
I'm glad you brought it up, and I agree.
I'm a
disagree.
germaphobe.
I don't disagree. Mike, thank you again, man, and we will.
Thank you, Drew.
He's
Thank
like,
you, Sue.
and on that, we'll have to go.
the mask imagery. But we appreciate you. And anything else you want to say? Want to give him one last shout out to Mikey Likes You?
Yeah, at Mikey Likes You 1, the number 1 on Instagram and Twitter, and then also the Mikey Likes You podcast. I really do. Please give it a shot. I think you'll like it.
We
All right,
love
guys.
you, Mike.
Thank
we
you,
love
guys.
Love you
Mike.
back.
And we'll.
No, we love Mike.
Yes, we do.
We don't just like Mike.
And we will. Are we in here tomorrow, Susan?
So also, I want you to mention that you do have a new episode of Dr. Drew After Dark up. It's with Christina P, number 72, called "Attracted to Crazy." Is that the funny one?
Yes, these are very, very funny.
Yeah, and then also tonight you're going to be on Fox News at 7 p.m. and people are like, "Oh, it's not on Facebook anymore. You can find it on foxla.com/live."
Oh,
You didn't know that?
I did not know that.
I've only said it 100 times, but it's okay.
foxla.com/live.
Yeah, so you can, so it goes live. They don't keep it up, though. You have to watch it at 7 o'clock.
Oh,
And I think the biggest reason is there were a lot of people kind of shitting on the show all the time, so they don't, and they just don't care about Facebook.
and
They do have it live, so if you're not in the LA basin or whatever in California and you don't get it,
They
then
are
you can
not
watch it.
used to the real world of social media.
Well, I think it was pretty good. It was doing really well, but the ratings were kind of going down, and it just was, I don't know, people that just want to get on there and give their opinion, It's just annoying after a while. Although Mike wasn't there, so if he was there protecting you, it would have been a lot better.
Everything would have been fine.
So my outro is going to be those banders, so I hope you guys enjoy, and thanks for calling in. We really appreciate it.
All right, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Susan, what time?
Tomorrow, I don't know. Are we doing this tomorrow? I don't know.
we
I may
should.
not be here tomorrow, so.
Oh, come on. Let's do one before we leave.
No. Well, I don't know. I might leave tonight.
Oh.
Ooh.
See how she is?
I don't know. I don't want to promise anything yet. So.
Okay, so we may be.
But we do have a show on Monday, and TBA. We don't know who's going to be on, but we'll figure it out.
Okay, so we may be out for the weekend and tomorrow. I'm going to try to do one tomorrow, but definitely not Saturday or Sunday, or probably Monday maybe Monday afternoon. Okay.
Well, Ask Dr. Drew is
Yes.
on Mondays. So.
Okay.
But thank you, Mike. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you all
Bye-bye,
next time. Bye bye.